Hey everybody, welcome to UGA Sports Live. I am your host, Roddy DeBolsey. I'm joined by Dane Young and the Hall of Famer himself, Jim Donnan. We're giving you a special evening edition of UGA Sports Live. Normally we do it at noon, but if we did that, then nobody would have watched Kirby, and that would be rude. So we wanted everyone to watch Kirby Smart and JT Daniels and Jordan Davis at SEC Media Days. We had a couple of reporters out there covering it live and in person. We happened to stay back because they don't want to let 6 or 7 people into like they used to back pre-COVID time. So we stayed back, and we're going to have reaction for you tonight. We'll talk about some of the stuff that came up. But first and foremost, we want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Athens Ford, Europie, and of course, our friends over at Academia Brewing Company. And just want to say shout out to them for letting us do the show. And, they never complain when we're like, hey, we're going to move the show from noon to 7 or something like that. Or we're going to move it on a Tuesday or Wednesday or a different show time. They never give us any grief about it. So that's just, they're friends through thick and thin, and we appreciate them sponsoring our show, and we appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. It means a lot to us, and turn on notifications so that like say, hey, they didn't come on at noon. Where are they? But then at 7 o'clock, you're trying to enjoy a nice Europie meal, and all of a sudden it pops up that the UGA Sports Live is live on YouTube. So we appreciate folks that do that, because that way they can tune in and not have to catch the replay. You can catch it live, and you can send in your questions. We have some good ones that came in earlier. I'm sure Dane will jump on those. But Coach Dane, I want to get your thoughts on day 2 of SEC Media Days. This was Kirby's time to shine, if you will. He got it out there and had a long opening statement. But to me, the guy that stole the show is Jordan Davis. I predicted this going in. I just think that he is such a vivacious, rambunctious, energetic young man that it's hard not to grin when you're interviewing him. The guy walks out, Jordan Davis walks out, and the first thing he does is thank the Redcoat Band and John Mishad in the equipment room. I mean, that's just an awesome guy. So you guys give me your thoughts on this.
Go ahead, Dane.
I was impressed with Jordan Davis, mainly because I think he wanted to be there. You could see the smile on his face. He was kind of owning the room. He had his SEC Network clip where he and Jordan Rodgers traded suit jackets, and obviously Jordan Rodgers got swallowed, and his suit jacket would only fit on one of Jordan Davis's arms. But honestly, I think Kirby Smart was so confident and in command, and I'm not doing the fanboy thing here. I'm going from an unbiased media analysis perspective. He owned the room, and he mentioned the topics that he wanted to. I thought he had really good stories just about spending more time with his kids during the last year, and that how he's had to prioritize that because they all play different sports. The Dogs for Pups program, that was a player initiative. I'm glad that he mentioned that. I'm glad that he touched on that, because it was a big thing that players did in the last year for kids in the Athens-Clarke area. And then on the field, I think that they're really confident in the team that they have. Now, whether that turns into one of those special legendary seasons, I have no idea. It's talking season right now, and it's not football season. But as a whole, I think you have to be pleased with the performance. And I think all 3 of Georgia's guys came across as very affable and media friendly, and gave some decent stories as well.
Yeah, one of the things you always do when you're promoting your program is you got to articulate the method. You have to be able to make sure that you get your message across, and you've got a really good platform there with the SEC Media Days because of all the national media that they're CBS, ESPN. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that you do interviews with, but really the one that everybody sees is the one that's on the SEC network. And Kirby was very relaxed, very forthcoming, really was able to get his message out to everybody that, he really is concerned about the vaccinations, which I would be too as a coach, particularly if you don't have as many vaccinated as some of these teams do. You're looking at down the road of really having a very tough situation there. But and the Dogs for Pups, all that stuff. But the idea that there is no question how proud he is to be the Georgia coach. It's his team, it's his school, it's his life. And, that really came across very vividly to me, watching him interact with the room, answering the questions, very spot on with that. And, you always get some that you don't understand why they're asking, but they ask them. And I just felt like that just made me very proud that he was our coach, and that one day I had a chance to be his coach. So as far as the other guys, there's no question. I talked to our group that's been watching this show for 3 or 4 years. A couple years ago, when Jordan came down to watch bowl practice before he enrolled here, and I mentioned then how personable he was, and the fact that I'd lived in Charlotte and had some good interaction with him, but meets people very easily. And then you got a chance to see some sides of JT that maybe you don't see when he just gets interviewed for 10 minutes, during the week like they do. So just a very A-plus effort by the University of Georgia from the contingency that was there. And, a very confident group that understands that, they've got some challenges ahead, but at the same time, they're going in with some pretty good people to meet those challenges.
Coach, you mentioned the contingent there. And if anybody wants to watch the videos, their interviews, you can do that at UGASports.com. You can read their comments. We have stories on both players, and of course, 2 stories on Coach Smart and all the stuff he touched on, all the stuff he covered. One of the things I thought was quite interesting was his comments. He was asked a lot about Darian Kendrick, Tyke Smith, Eric Gilbert. And I get that they're the new guys. And he kept saying, look, we've got these other players who are out there. I don't think he set the bar too high. I don't think he set the bar too low. He tried to keep the focus as he is wont to do on what he actually has, but he understands where the expectations are. And he, talked about managing that. But I did think it was very interesting when he talked about Eric Gilbert, that he said that it just kind of, I don't want to say fell into his lap, but they kind of reached out. And I didn't like the reporter's question. The reporter asked him, Eric Gilbert committed to all the teams in the SEC or half the teams in the SEC before he committed to Georgia. He committed to Florida. And then that's not all the teams. But, and again, I understand we speak in hyperbole and we try to make points and stuff like that. But I thought it was quite interesting that he said that it wasn't an all-out recruitment from day to day to day. And I'm like, I think he's sandbagging there a little bit. I think they really wanted him, and I think they stayed on Eric Gilbert a little bit more than Kirby's letting on.
Here's the deal on that, and everybody needs to understand right now, you included, Roddy. It's Eric. That's how you pronounce his name, Eric Gilbert.
Eric Gilbert.
He wants to be called, and you can look it up. That's what he wants. And I don't really know a whole lot about it, but I found out that's what he wants.
I've said both, so I'm covered.
From now on, everybody on UGA Sports, let's call him Eric. That's his name. But here's
Mr. Gilbert.
Here's the point. He was very highly recruited from the 9th grade on by us. We knew his family. We knew all about him. Dale McGee developed a tremendous relationship with him, and it was tough down the stretch for him to say no to Todd Hartley and Dale McGee and that group. And so we had some inherent advantages over the last few months, as far as we didn't have to build some new bridges there. We already had them built. And in the end, there's a lot to be said about playing 70 miles from your hometown. There's a lot to be said about being in the state where you grew up and all that. So, these people want to ask tough questions, and that's certainly it. But I thought Kirby handled it extremely well. And, the biggest thing that I got out of the day, Georgia, was the fact that Nick Saban, speaking down at the Texas High School Clinic, which is a real honor to be able to speak to that. I know everybody can't figure out why is the coach going down there. Well, because he signed 5 of the best players in the state last year, and every high school coach in Texas is there for that deal, and he gets a chance to speak to him, and that's why he went. But he mentioned the fact that one of his players, a guy that's never started a game, a guy that's only passed for 159 yards, probably going to be starting quarterback, is approximating $1 million in NIL after 20 days of it being legal. And I think it was well suited from the standpoint of, look, you come to Alabama, even if you're not a first team guy, you're going to make $1 million. No, I don't know it's just that, but just caught everybody off guard. I know they asked Lane Kiffin there right when it happened. He said, it's unbelievable that that's happening. And I don't think Nick would state that if it's not true, but there's probably a lot of that going on around the country. But overwhelming, really, hopefully, that a lot of these kids are going to make that kind of cash. I mean, just unreal.
And the timing of him saying this is not a mistake. Nick Saban is a master media manipulator. And if you look at who's speaking tomorrow at SEC Media Days, if you're listening to this later, who's speaking Wednesday at SEC Media Days, it's Nick Saban. And so he knows that information was going to get out there. He knows he's going to be asked about it a lot tomorrow. And he knows all the eyeballs will be on him in the discussions around the IL after that. Now, whether he actually gives an answer to it or decides he wants to be a little grumpy and just kind of shrug it off from there, I have no idea. That's where his strategy comes into it. But I promise you that figure is going to be big for the recruits that Alabama's.
He'll answer it. He'll make it work. I mean, that's just the way he does things.
Is that him calling you now, Coach?
No, it's somebody else. But seriously, you got a situation there with every coach. You're trying to promote your program, and I thought Kirby bringing out the Dogs for Pup. I mean, we're one of the few places in the country that got that going on now, and he did a good job with that. It was awesome.
I like the way I don't say sold that, but the way he explained that. He said, "Look, I went to my players and told them I don't want sloganeering. I don't want virtue signaling on social media. I want action. I want you guys to do something." And the stuff they've done, I know the Downtown Athletic Club here in Athens, the Downtown Falcons. My son played on that squad. It's a great program down there. They do wonderful work. And when the Dogs for Pup guys bring them a bunch of stuff, you just love it. But if you're a recruit, that sounds great. But I think this guy made $1 million and he hasn't even started a game yet. What are the starters making? So I think, and again, and Dane pointed this out, I think before the whole thing hit, said some guys are going to cash in really well. Some guys are not. And we've seen some guys playing video games against, they make $5 a game playing against other people. And, you can do a video game thing where you can pick to play against a Zamir White or John Fitzpatrick, somebody like that. And you play them in one of these video games and you make $5, $10, $15. A lot of guys are doing Cameo. I know, Coach, you're on Cameo. You do a great job with that. People can have messages sent. And, that's not crazy money, but $1 million. We saw the two guys at Texas A&M. There's a real estate company out there giving them $10,000 a piece to go on and do a podcast or something. Some guys are going to – but it's the same thing when it comes to recruiting. Some guys get that 5-star treatment and have 100 – I mean, Arch Manning. We had a story on Arch Manning today. Everybody in the country is watching him. Whereas a very deserving 3 or 4 star is not going to make a whole lot, not going to see a whole lot. And Kirby brought up then a whole NIL thing without us asking. He said, look, I'm going to bring that up. And I don't think it's going to be the end of college football, as a lot of people have predicted. So Kirby took on took on transfers, took on NIL, took on a bunch of things right off the bat, the Kids for Pups thing. And I thought a lot of times those opening statements, and Dane and I've made jokes about this for years.
Dogs for Pups.
Dogs for Pups, excuse me. When they do the whole, I'm going to talk, I'm supposed to be here for 30 minutes. I'm going to talk for 26 minutes so you don't ask me a lot of questions. Kirby's like, look, I know you guys want to ask me about these other things, but here are the points that I want to make. And the biggest one I thought was the COVID vaccination things. I know people don't want to hear about it, but when he said, look, we're above 85%, we're trying to get to 100. And he detailed some of the hesitancy and how they addressed it. And a lot of people start rolling their eyes going, I'm sick of hearing about this. But I'm telling you, it is an issue. And Kirby said, we're going to make it a competitive advantage. We're not going to lose guys mid-season. You saw it's in politics everywhere. People who've been vaccinated still getting it. He's like, look, I don't want my guys to get it. I don't want my guys to be out. The ones that have already had it, they didn't want to take a vaccination, but they're going to be, I got them vaccinated anyway, so that we don't miss it. And again, it's that attention to detail that was shown and illustrated in that, what was that, 20-minute opener there, Dane? How long did he go?
Yeah, it was about 20 minutes, and he took some questions as well. I want to touch on something with NIL, though, because it was so counterculture.
I want to hit this about vaccinations, and then we'll get on it. Here's the thing. Here's the reason you listen to UGASports Live. You listen to it to hear some scuttlebutt, but you also hear facts. Greg Sankey said 6 out of 14 teams are very highly vaccinated. He didn't say that 8 of them are lower than whale shit right now. There's some teams that are way below 40% in our league. And that's a long, long way to go. I mean, we're looking down the barrel of some serious situations here. You look at the way this COVID spread is happening with these variants around the country. I mean, I watch TV at night. It worries me. I'm 76 years old. I mean, seriously now, you need to do all you can to educate your family, educate the people around you about what can happen within the framework of somebody that is not vaccinated. I mean, they can say, well, you know, all this other stuff, but realistically, everybody wants to watch college football, have full stadiums, see all that stuff happen. What's going to happen all of a sudden if all of, you know, you start getting these restraints again? What you got to do when you got it spreading like that? It's spreading right now. So everything's not hunky-dory with the SEC right now on this vaccination stuff now. And I'm telling you, and you can quote me or say whatever you want to, but it's not. But it's hunky-dory in Georgia because they got somebody in charge over there, and Ron Corson, that's on it. You go around and you watch different things. These kids are getting constant reminders about Coco Gauff just got tested positive for and is not going to be able to go to the Olympics. The NC State baseball team. These things hit home with these guys. You're going to miss games. If you miss games, you might not get drafted as high. I mean, those are things that come across very vividly. And so we can talk about NIL right now, but vaccination worries the dog manure out of me. I can tell you that.
Well, Bubba Watson just missed the Open Championship because of COVID exposure. He didn't even test positive. It was an exposure to someone that did. And so, look, I didn't realize, Coach, that the numbers for some schools were that low. It was an implication that Florida was not at the percentage that they needed to be. But Dan Mullen said that felt good that they were going to be getting there. And, you know, the assumption is that Vanderbilt's doing fine because the private school, they're, you know, requiring students to have vaccinations. Georgia's not doing that. The state's not doing that. USG is not doing that. But 85% on campus, I mean, that's a big time number. And what I liked is that Kirby said it's not high enough. Like they're pursuing to get it even higher.
Well, he's coming from a good spot where he wants his players protected. But at the same time, as Coach points out, a lot of these we've seen, you know, we saw the Congress people from Texas, you know, they were vaccinated, but they had 5 breakthroughs. And you're going to have a situation where you're not allowed to play like that. So you may have a vaccinated player miss some time. So again, I'm not trying to bring up the specter, but the point being, Kirby's like, look, I don't want that to happen to any of my guys, you know. And I thought he addressed that and
and the way that he addressed that too.
I mean, we talk about the SEC, ACC ain't no better. You know, the Big 10, Big 12, they got issues. So there are certain schools, as Coach points out, that are having a serious hesitancy or just electing not to, but it's going to pop up and you're going to see players not on the field. The thing is now, there ain't no rescheduling. You're going to have to forfeit, you know, right, or play with what you got.
Right.
So.
I just love the way that he said that no one told anyone what they need to do, but like Dale McGee got up there and said, this is why I made the decision I did with this vaccination, because I want to be there to see my parents. I want to be involved in my community. I want to be a good example for my family. And that probably resonated with some players, those personal experiences, those personal stories, not telling people you have to do this, but giving them all the information and the reasons why. That's how you make meaningful change happen like that.
True. Here's what happens. I mean, just like anything, there's the other side of the story, like Paul Harvey, you know, people are getting these things like somebody spread it out among some of the players that if you take this test, you might get syphilis or something like that. Who knows what all they're being told. But the point, and I'm not saying that happened here in Georgia, but the point is, you know, that's a scary situation when you hear something like that. And so that's why we're very fortunate to have the medical people involved here that are doing such a good job within our team, but also a national posture there. Last year, Ron was the head of the whole SEC task force on COVID. We wouldn't even had a season if it hadn't have been for those people, that all those doctors and trainers that counseled each other on how to counseled each other about how to have a season, and that's what they did. So
hey, I'll tell you this about Ron Corson, Coach. They use him. Kirby mentioned him about 4 or 5 times today and actually said, hey, I know I'm talking about Ron Corson a lot, but he is the team MVP. And we talked about recruiting. They point out the fact that here's all the guys that have rehabbed with Ron Corson. Here's Todd Gurley. Here's Nick Chubb. Here's all these guys that got injured and came back, and he's done that. You can't put a price on how much Ron Corson means to this program and how much he's helped it. And then when you had all these kids who were committing and being recruited on Zoom, talking to coaches, they can't come visit. They'd have Ron Corson sit in there and talk to his parents and go, this is what our protocols are. This is what we're doing to take care of your kid. And speaking, he also mentioned Ron Corson saying that Don Blaylock and George Pickens were still working with him. That's who's doing their rehab. And he said that, George is straight line running. I thought that was a big piece of news there, that he's actually back to running there. And he said Don Blaylock's not quite back yet, but he's hopeful. So I thought from the injury standpoint, it looked pretty good, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of Blaylock, I mean, there's no reason for him with another month and a half before the first game to be out there doing anything but straight ahead running. I mean, there's no advantage in trying to, go out there and beat somebody on 1-on-1 or 7-on-7. Just keep reinforcing your leg and get ready. That's what they did with Samir a couple years ago when he came out with second surgery. So I think it's just a question of, we've got some guys that got some things that they had to do to clean up to get ready to go. But the one thing that's overriding to me about our team right now is just the amount of speed and size we have. And it's just going to be important for all these guys to come back and be ready to go on August 2nd.
Yep. Speaking of cleanup, I do want to mention our friends at Athens Ford. If you are in the market, say you're trying to find one of those a good pre-owned vehicle, which are the pre-owned vehicles. I don't know if you guys saw this in the Wall Street Journal recently. The price on those things is through the roof. It's just tough to find good vehicles now. But Athens Ford just happens to be the state of Georgia's largest and best Ford certified pre-owned vehicle. They have two levels of certification. They have the blue and then the gold. The blue, it's 139 point inspection. It's for any car up to 10 years or 120,000 miles. The gold, I recommend the gold. The gold certified is for vehicles only up to 6 years old and under 80,000 miles, 172 point inspection. Those things are cleaned up and they feel brand new. When you get one, you don't think that somebody's owned that vehicle before you. It feels like yours is the first butt that's ever sat in that seat, and they are immaculate. They take great care of it. So if you're looking for a new or pre-owned vehicle, and of course they come with the lifetime powertrain warranty, check out our friends at Athens Ford. Go by their website first. You'll get the $250 off any vehicle that you purchase. If you're a student or recent graduate, you'll get $500 off. If you're an active duty or a veteran, if in armed forces, you'll get a $500 off certificate there. So check out our friends at Athens Ford, and they will take care of you. Dane, I know we got some clips. We've been talking a lot, but let's hear from Kirby Smart. Let's hear from Jordan Davis. Let's hear from JT Daniels. Why don't you give us that?
Well, I want to talk about the NIL piece of this, and Jordan Davis is my transition into it because even though there are guys out there making a lot of money, when Jordan Davis was asked about name, image, and likeness, he said, I'm not working toward that. I'm not focused on that. I don't want to be involved in it. Now, I will say he has the advantage of knowing that if all things go well, he's probably going to make a lot of money just in about 6 months, as he gets into the agent world and gets into the NFL draft process early in the spring. But here is what Jordan Davis had to say in regard to his focus for this year, because, again, it's atypical of a lot of other people his age.
One thing that I did for blocking out the noise, I deleted social media. I only got back on it just for the media day week, so just want to make sure that I stay grounded, not get too high, get too low. It's a lot of buzz, but at the end of the day, football is a game. Got to play it, and that's how I approach things during the season. I approach it as it's a game, we got to win, and it doesn't matter who we play, but. I guess, Clemson and Georgia, they have this narrative that, two powerhouses, one, is make or break, but it's not really make or break for us.
Coach, has got to be music to a coach's ears.
Yeah, I mean, just because he's everybody knows he's a team guy, but he certainly gets that across with very sincere. And I think one of the things that people don't take into account about last year's team was the significant injury that he had against Kentucky last year, and kept him out of the several games, including the University of Florida. And if you'll go back the last 2 years prior to last season and watch Jordan Davis dominate the line of scrimmage and jack that center up from Florida for just like he owned him for 2 years, that was a very significant miss in that game, not having him and not having Pickens, but still give Florida credit. But it's just a force in the D line to have a guy that massive that can maintain leverage. Like he said today, one of the things he's working on is pass rush. He made a good point that everything's played outside the tackle box now, so many plays, and he's got to work on his being able to run inside out and things like that. But just a real great representative. It's pretty easy to see why Kirby took him today. And one of the things that a guy told me in sales one time when he was talking about salesmen, everybody's got to have something that they use to make them make the customer remember them and all. And said usually a big guy is somebody that gets their attention, because hey, that guy was massive that came and called on me today. And I'm not talking about overweight guys, but I'm just saying when you're a big guy and you can talk and you're smooth on your feet and genuine and got a smile like that, I mean, come on, it's just hard not to see why he's going to be a big-time success wherever he goes.
I look at a guy like that, I'm thinking if I were a center, he's so friendly and so kind until he grabs me by my lapels, stacks me up, and then peeks into the backfield, decide which way to throw me. It's like, Jordan, you want to put me down now? He is an absolute beast on the field. But Dane, I'm glad you brought up that clip because I did think it was very interesting that Kirby said, "Look, we got two guys," and Kirby, also a master guy. When he brought up his NIL thing, he said, "We got one guy that's involved in it, and one guy's not." And Jordan, with that personality and of course his production on the field, he is a fan favorite. You would think that whatever he did, he could cash in right now on NIL deals, but he's like, no, I don't want to deal with that. I don't even want to deal with social media. And he shuts it down. He turned it on this week because he has to, put out some of the stuff. He's been asked to be a representative of UGA for this week. But that is a guy who's not just coming back. And I go back to I can't remember the year, but there was a year a bunch of players on Georgia's defense came back, and they all knew they were going to the NFL. And a lot of them worked to kind of fluff their own stats a little bit. They didn't play as a cohesive team. They were all kind of, not all of them, but a lot of them were into their own thing. But this is a guy who's not just coming back to make his spot better. It feels genuine that he's coming back wanting to win. He's really focused in. It doesn't feel like it's just, I could increase my personal draft profile. Or am I just reading too much into it? Am I fanboying too much over here?
No, I think the thing with Jordan is, he's just a guy at heart that loves being here. He loves being around his teammates. I saw a thing a couple years ago when Peyton Manning was talking about coming back for his fourth year at Tennessee, was going to be the first round draft choice and all that. He was talking about how he liked to go on the ball walk, how he liked to do all these other things, and he just wanted to do it one more year. Of course, he wanted to try to win the Heisman Trophy for sure and beat Florida and all that. But the main thing is overall, there's nothing hokey or wrong with wanting to be on a team.
Yeah.
Nothing more rewarding than the team victory. You can talk all you want to about all these individual awards, but to go in a locker room after a big win, after you've laid it out there and you get out there and get a big win, it's a life-changing experience that you just you want to share it with your friends. And after the game, you want to be right there with your parents and your loved ones and be outside because that's what it's all about. And regardless of this NIL and transfer portal and all this other stuff, I tell you another thing that hit me was listening to Sankey talk about the transfer portal. He said over 1,500 kids have been in the transfer portal in Division I football. Only 4 of them have landed places. So that means there's 1,100 guys still trying to figure out what they're going to do. That's incredible.
That's less than a full third there. That's brutal.
Your note about the friendships on the team. Jordan Davis said that when he decided to come back, he had called Devontae Wyatt. He said, "What are you thinking about doing?" And Devontae said, "I'm going to come back." And Jordan said, "Okay, I will too." Now, I'm sure it wasn't like that simple to be that way, but I'm sure that's a factor. He wanted to play beside his buddy on the defensive line.
Well, Roquan Smith cried when he decided to go. This guy wanted to come back. I mean, he knew he was going to be a first round, but he wanted to come back and play. And so I say that, I'm not trying to be a fanboy, but I love Jordan Davis to hear this interview, and you could just tell that he's having fun. Like you said, the guy's grinning ear to ear to do media interviews. He loves representing UGA. He's been a big UGA fan, and I think of when Georgia beat Florida a couple of years ago. Who is in the picture giving Kirby Smart a giant bear hug? Jordan Davis, picking him up off the ground, loving him. So he wants to come back and do that again. So really excited about him.
What kills me though, watching these guys analyze our team and talk about everything, and they really do a good job. I mean, there's no question they do their homework and they do all, but they must have selective amnesia. Do they remember who we had playing for us in 2017? All four receivers are in the pros right now. Hardman, Wims, Godwin, Riley. They're all four in the backs. Swift, Michelle, Chubb. They're all in the pros and doing well. The quarterback who's beat Florida 3 straight years, who beat Tennessee 3 straight years, who beat Tech 3 straight years. He's in the NFL, but he's not playing, but he's on a team. And then those linemen on offense, come on, look at those guys. So it's just, hey, Georgia's got the people this year. Sure, we got them. But we had them in 2017. Roquan Smith, are you kidding me? All those other guys we had, Baker. I mean, come on. We had players.
Lorenzo Carter.
And we got players now, but all of a sudden they said, well, Georgia's finally ready to go. I mean, when somebody said that today, I almost passed out.
Well, they do have a good schedule. That lines up. But I want to go back to something.
But we really had some players in 17 now. Come on.
Absolutely. And again, some guys in that 2017 class, at least 2 on offense and 2 on defense, who decided to come back for their senior year, led that team, and they had a blast, and they almost won a national title. So I'm not saying it's duplicate, but the idea of coming back, having a good time, enjoying the process. Speaking of, I thought they had a great question when they talked to JT Daniels, the quarterback, about what's he looking forward to. And he said, the dog walk. I'm like, what do you mean? This is a guy who's never been through a full dog walk. They didn't.
Let me play the clip, Roddy. Let me play the clip.
That's what I'm saying. So let's hit it.
Roddy, just get in front of it too quick.
Honestly,
starting this over.
It's probably what I'm most excited for. Honestly, I've never experienced a dog walk, and they said like 30,000 people go there. Like I've never seen that before. I think the closest was like when we played away at Texas my freshman year. Like that was pretty packed. But I've never played in the environment where it's like it was ridiculous last year for me to see even at 25%. Like when the fourth quarter hits and we do all the red lights and all that stuff, like people go crazy at those games. It's awesome to see, and I haven't got to see it full capacity yet, so I can't wait.
It struck me though that there's so many players on Georgia's team, even though it's a veteran team in some spots, that haven't had the full college football experience yet.
Exactly, and the other thing is there's guys that just went through their first spring practice and they've been here a year and a half. I mean, it's just a different deal with the COVID, but there's no question, and Kirby brought it up today, that the home field advantage is certainly a big part of SEC football, and there wasn't that this last year without the fans and without the full stadiums and all that. And you talk about snap counts, being able to hear your counts, all those things. Now it's going to be different. Hopefully, if all these teams get vaccinated and everything stays the same, and we're able to have full capacity. But I always like to hear quarterbacks talk about things. But there was one interview. This lady wanted to know about JT's different kinds of facial hair. It went through his whole rundown on why he had what, and he did a good job with it, and it's all based on trying to emulate somebody, who the different characters were. But I don't really think he went there knowing they were going to ask him about his different kind of facial hair appointments there. But JT really did a good job today of showing why he's the kind of a quiet leader, but a guy that everybody looks up to, and everybody needs your quarterback to be the guy that's the face of your offense, and he certainly looks like that at this point.
Dane, I like the fact that he kind of gave the backstory on how he decided to pick Georgia. He talked about spending some time talking to Todd Monken, and the two of them going back and forth, and how they are alike schematically. And you guys have done a lot of film breakdowns and stuff like that. The stuff that you hear about him, some people talk about strong arm, and Kirby's like, hey, arm strength is great, but it's not the end all be all. You got to do the right things at quarterback. But when JT was talking about, Monken's just saying, look, we agree schematically, and this guy is talked about as having a strong arm and a huge football IQ. And I think people finally got a good peek into that mindset. This guy is pretty bright.
Well, and I think the other thing that we saw in relation to Todd Monken, because I think the narrative, whether fair or not, is Todd Monken is this NFL guy. He's played with, coached all these great offensive players in the NFL. The scheme's going to be complex for college. And JT Daniels says what he's learned is that Georgia's offense does simple better than anyone else when they execute, and that football's not as complicated as it can seem sometimes. The faster player is going to win in some cases, and a simple offense can definitely work, and that's what he's trying to execute.
Yeah, I mean, these people talk about, hey, Georgia's going to change their offense and we got the same plays we had ever since Kirby's been here, but we have more of certain concepts and less of others. And Todd has some more protections and bring some pro concepts, but you don't reinvent the wheel on offense anymore. It's a copycat thing. Everybody, you see a good play. I saw a good play the other day where the quarterback, he had to throw that double pass, and the quarterback throws it out to a guy, and then he throws it to the tight end coming back across. I saw it where he threw it out to him, and instead of the tight end going out, he sneaked underneath him, and he went out right where the bubble screen was, and they hit him for a touchdown. I've never seen that before, but that just goes to show you, I'm 76. I learned a new play, but most of these plays are pretty much copycat, and we had this last week, and I'm gonna say it again. A recruit to say, I'm going to wait and see how Georgia, what their offense looks like the first game and then I'll feel a lot better about them. Come on. Our offense is going to look good. It's going to look good all year. We got good players. We got good concepts. We got really good coaches. But, it's not going to be the Clemson game where we're going to throw 50 passes or you just try to win the game. That's what we'll do.
Yeah, Georgia's biggest thing is going to be turnovers. If they protect the football, then Georgia's going to win a lot of football games. If they, lose it like they did against South Carolina a few years ago and throw 3 interceptions and a half, obviously it makes it tough to win.
And Coach, you mentioned the Clemson game. We want to have get Coach Smart's comments on that. He was asked about it, and he basically said the points didn't matter, which I thought was interesting. But you can check that clip out. But first, before we bring up his comments, I do want to mention our friends over at Academia Brewing Company. You talk about that home field advantage. When you come to Athens and you come to enjoy the game with 93,000 of your dog brethren, be sure to stop by Academia Brewing Company. They will take great care of you. You can get a great meal. You can bring in a huge disparate group of people, and they can all get something they like off the menu. And like I said, they have a fantastic chef out there who makes wonderful meals. But there's also so many different types of beer, so many different types of wine, whatever you like out there to drink. If you just want a Coke, you can grab one of those. But I do highly recommend the Hoprodisiac. They have it back. It is one of the greatest beers they've ever made. The Hoprodisiac is, if you're a hophead, you like those types of beers, the hoppy ones, this is the best hop beer I've ever had. So when you get a chance, swing by our friends at Academia Brewing Company. They're out on the west side of Athens, out by the mall. So when you come into town, go straight there, get your meal, then check into your hotel, get ready for the game the next day, or go there after the game if it's an early one, or go there for lunch before the game starts. When you get a chance. And look, if you don't have tickets, that's a great place to watch it. They have the lounge with all the couches and the great beer that you can enjoy while you're watching on these giant TVs. They have the game synced up. So it's a great place to watch the game if you don't have tickets, or if it's an away game and you can't travel, Swing by our friends at Academia Brewing Company, and they will take care of you. Speaking of being that away game, the first one is against Clemson, and I mentioned that I thought it was he spoken like a true coach, if you will, when asked about the Georgia Clemson game. Kirby Smart basically said, look, it doesn't matter if we win or lose. It's the lessons we take away from it. And I think that's kind of looking at the entire season as a whole. If you would run that, Dane.
Yeah, I think the first game can be what you want it to be. You can use it as a springboard. You can use it as a learning experience. You know, the outcome's probably going to dictate how you use that game. But neither team will be in the playoffs or out of the playoffs based on the outcome of the game. It's a lot more important what you do and how you manage the success from that game or the failure from that game. And we try to look at it from what did we do well and what did we do poorly, regardless of the outcome. Like the scoreboard only matters to you guys. For us, it's going to be if we play really well and do good things, how can we improve? If we don't, what area can we improve on? We're very technical about the next step, not emotional that it's over or it's won.
I think that's a very honest answer. I also think it's a correct answer that the whole game of the century thing, first game of the year, usually that's going to fall a little flat. The last time that we heard of a game like that, it was Alabama and Florida State a few years ago in Atlanta. And obviously we saw how that season ended up going for Florida State. And I'm not saying that's going to happen for Georgia or Clemson, but neither team is going to make the playoff by winning that game. Now the road gets a little harder for either if they lose, but neither team's going to make it just because of that game.
Disagree.
Really?
Yeah. Look, if you're Georgia and you win that game, or excuse me, you win that game and then you lose the SEC championship, you're like, look, we already beat a playoff team. We lost Alabama or Texas A&M and the SEC, and it's an additional game that we had to play for winning the SEC East. We've already got a playoff caliber win. Put us in the playoffs. And so they're going to have to. I just don't see a way around that. Even if you lose the SEC championship game, you lose that game. You know, now you have to win the SEC title to get into it. So to me, it does. Kirby's right. He's absolutely right. But he doesn't get to pick who's in the playoffs. And when I first heard that whole spot, I'm like, he's dead on. He's correct. But then I thought about the way there is a selection committee. And if you've got a win in your pocket over Clemson, a perennial playoff team, you've already said, look, unless we lose 2 games during the regular season, we should be in the playoffs.
I'm not so sure. I'm not, because it depends on other teams.
Here. I mean, come on. There's too many things can happen. I mean,
absolutely.
You know, just like you said, what happens if you lose a regular season game after an SEC or so? Yeah. It's just the point from preparation, though, is that we're spending the right amount of time on with our team, the way we go about things. I'm very impressed with the detail that we utilize, not only looking at our first opponent, but all our opponents. And then that's what most coaches do. And then when you get ready to play them that week, you've already had some work on them, and it's in your mind about who their players are, and you've seen a scouting report, and you've done all that. So it's just like people in the corporate world. I mean, they're looking ahead 6 months from now. They got a big business meeting. They're trying to close this. I mean, you got a plan. How do you look into the future? That's what part of being successful is, being ready to be ready for whatever happens coming down the stretch.
Well, and my main point, Roddy, is that we've seen that winning the conference and being the conference champion matters in the eyes of the playoff committee. But the other thing is that historically, when it comes to making a playoff or even in the BCS, if you want to go back that far, losing later hurts more than losing early. Now, that's not fair. That shouldn't always be the case. But typically, the human element involved says, I just saw that team lost to this team, yada, yada, yada. A lot of things are going to be forgotten in the first week. So it's going to be a big game. It's going to be a big showcase. It's going to be a big celebration, as we've talked about with the vaccines and everything. If it goes off as planned, it's going to be a massive celebration for college football and college athletics as a whole. But in terms of what it means for the whole season, I don't see a make or break based off of it.
I'm not saying it's make or break. I'm saying it does determine whether or not you get in the playoffs, simply because, as you point out, winning at the end means more. Losing is held against you more towards the end of the season. But at the same time, when you hear the justifications from the playoff committee, they point to big wins during the season. Even if it's week 1, you know, Georgia beat a ranked Tennessee team that went on to be terrible. They beat a ranked Auburn team that went on to be terrible, you know, or compared to where they normally are. Didn't matter. Those were ranked wins at the time they happened. If you're able to beat Clemson in the first week, as long as you take care of the rest of the season, you can lose at the end and still say, look, yeah, we had to play this extra game and we deserve to be in it. We have beaten a playoff team, or a perennial playoff team. So to me, it will matter to the playoff committee because they look for those key wins. They need justification when they say, here are the 4 teams, or here's how they're ranked in order. And if you've got a win over a Clemson, it puts you up there. Now, if you have a loss to them and you win the SEC title, well, now you're like, hey, our win at the end here over a very good team, whoever you're going to face in the SEC championship game, should get us in. But that loss to Clemson may drag them a little bit, may be a boat anchor. But they're not going to take the winner of the SEC and not put them in.
How long can you talk about it?
I'm sorry.
Hey, seriously. I mean, I'm not talking about you. I mean, realistically, look at our schedule. Do we have one game against a top 25 team this year beside Clemson? Florida's not a top 25.
That's what I'm saying. It matters.
I think Florida's a top 25 team.
I mean, in some, but not some other polls.
I guess we'll see when we get there. But Roddy, you notice how you and I heard something different from what Coach did, and this goes to what we do. You and I went straight into like the media thing of like, what does this mean? What's the narrative on this? And Coach is like, they're doing the preparation that they do for every game, and that's good. That's what you want.
Yeah, I shouldn't have gotten, but I mean, I just think it's so ridiculous for us to be talking about the playoffs right now. But at the same time, I bring the show down anyhow, according to some people. So I'm going to leave that alone.
You never run. You are our reality pill, Coach. That's the thing. You've always called it like you've seen it. I know you use we and us when you talk about the Bulldogs. You are a Bulldog through and through. You coached them. The head coach is one of your mentees. You're a mentor to him. But you don't sugarcoat it. You don't lie to us. You don't get our hopes up. You don't feed us a pile of crap. And you point out what's really going on, and we appreciate it. And the show would be garbage without you.
I think you got a good point about both of you. I mean, it could be either way. But fortunately for us, the Clemson game is going to help our resume if we win it. There's no question about that. Do we have any questions tonight? Or
let me check over to the YouTube chat here.
Hey, while you're checking on that, I want to mention something that I want our people to try when they get a chance. When you while Dane's checking on that, swing over to URPI, any of the URPI locations, and try the summer float. You basically take some blood orange sorbet and you drop it into a Sprite. So think about this orange sorbet. Orange sorbet is fantastic by itself, but add it to a Sprite and like a Coke float, and it is a Sprite float. They call it the summer float. It looks phenomenal. You can get that at any of the URPI locations. This past Sunday, they were giving away free ice cream and free sorbet. So when you get a chance, I don't want to say pay those guys back, but be sure that you have downloaded their URPI app, because that's how you get stuff like the free sorbets, the free breadsticks, the free sandwiches, the free salads, the free custom pastas, and of course the free pizzas, which I have a couple of those because every time I order from URPI, I always do it on a Tuesday. And that gets you double points on your app, and those points add up fast, and you can grab a number of wonderful free products from URPI. So they take care of you at their plus locations. They just opened a new location. I really forgot where it was. I think it was in Winder. Yeah. But the point being, they're opening up new ones all the time. And if you want a good franchise, call Drew or Natalie French and they'll take care of you.
I think it was down in Grayson. My wife works down that way. I think that's where it was. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Near Grayson High School over there. King Ryan on the YouTube chat says, is it possible for George Pickens to come back sooner than expected? We talked about him running, doing the straight line running right now.
Possible, I mean, there's always chance that anybody can come back earlier, particularly from the standpoint he didn't have any structural damage outside of the ACL. A lot of times when you have the other things, you have to mend all that, but he just, ACL is a terrible injury, but it's possible, but I mean, I wouldn't get the hopes up. I know in the case, and every coach, when a guy's got a future like George has, they're going to work very hard to protect his leg and think about down the road more than trying to win a couple games for Georgia. coming back early. You know what I mean? So they owe it to that kid, to his mama, to everybody else to make sure he's ready to go. So I wouldn't hope that he's going to be back any earlier than it usually takes 7-8 months for an ACL.
I hope that's the case, because it was tough watching Jalen Waddle be less than healthy when he was trying to play in the playoff and national championship game. I mean, he did it, but he was not right.
I guarantee it's a heck of a decoy, though. They ran that shuttle screen to him underneath, and he skipped along down there for about 40 yards, and their other team's thinking, holy moly, they got Jalen Waddle, not to mention, the Heisman Trophy winner, Devontae Smith. But, the one thing that I would bring out, too, again, that I talked about before, Devontae Smith caught 47 passes behind the line of scrimmage last year. 47 bubble screens out of 100 and some catches that he had. And just amazing the way they utilized him and got him the ball. He caught 16 passes in the first half against Clemson in a championship game. 16 before he broke his finger. Good Lord. I mean, that's a career for some guys.
Still trying to wrap my head
Roddy,
around
I'll kick this one. I was going to get to another question. I didn't know if you had a comment on that.
I was going to say a quick
Cool.
update on some of the other guys. Marcus Rosemy-Jackson is 100% healthy, so he's back. He had that ankle injury. They said that he should be fine. Nakobe Dean is back from his labrum surgery, should be 100% by fall camp. Kyrus Jackson had his knee cleaned up, as Coach mentioned earlier. He should be ready for the start of practice. And MJ Sherman, who had shoulder surgery or a shoulder cleanup, should also be ready to go. So it looks like a number of players are back for Georgia to start fall camp. So you got to be excited about that.
Couple comments from the YouTube chat on some things that we talked about, and there was a question coming too. Chuck Ward, friend of the show, says, no doubt that Jordan Davis is electric. Coach Donnan called that when he was special back when he was in high school. Blaine Gilmer, our new contributor to UGASports.com, says that Coach Smart's comments on the secondary were telling for the competition ahead, that there's a lot of pieces that need to be moved around before September 4th. B. Hamp says that Devontae Wyatt will be all conference at the end of the season. Mark it down. And a couple questions coming in. Southern Buck 352. Will Ryan Trouble Davis finally see the field this year?
He's got some people ahead of him. I mean, when you look at our linebacker situation, looks pretty good. Quay Walker, I walked by him the other day and asked him how much he weighed. I was thinking he'd say 220, 225. He's 240. He just looks so good. And he got Tyndall, but certainly he and Sorey, these guys are good guys for the future, no question.
I do hope Devontae Wyatt gets that all conference. I mean, that guy I could walk to his high school from where I used to live in Decatur, and it's a rough neighborhood. It's a rough place, but that guy is just, he's a joy. So it'd be fun to watch him.
You got to beat out Jordan Davis and Carter and Walker from our own team, though. I mean,
yeah, it's gonna be tough, but I'm just saying, I'm glad he's coming back. He's a great young man.
He's a good team guy.
Tim McKinley asks, is the hype for Darnell Washington justified? Will Georgia actually use the tight end? Rinse and repeat.
Yeah, I think he's justified just because the guy's big and strong. He can run. He's learned how to use his body and blocking. He's done a really good job. He benefited very much from Trey McKitty being hurt during the fall camp, and he got a lot of work working with the ones and learned a lot of good technique being a tight end that he didn't have coming in from Las Vegas. I mean, he was just basically a ball catcher. He didn't have to block anybody, he just smother them. So I think his blocking certainly improved, and then his route running, he knows how to use his body carries. He's got good hands. He can explode on the ball. We've got guys at tight end with him and Fitzpatrick and Bowers that anybody would like that room anywhere in the country. And then Eric Gilbert is an all-conference tight end that they're looking at wide receiver that can play in there too. So anybody – Roddy always likes, hey, throw it to the tight end. It drives
Please.
me. But I understand why, because we haven't. But I would be shocked if we didn't have a tight end among our leading receivers this year.
Oh, there you go. You heard it here first. I do want to go back to something Blaine Gilmer touched on when he mentioned Kirby Smart spoke extensively about some of the guys in the secondary. He was asked about Darian Kendrick and Tyke Smith. And it's something, Coach, that you mentioned before when we were talking about the first guy from West Virginia, the transfer away that actually went to Auburn. And you said, well, he's not really a man-to-man guy, and that's what Kirby's looking for. Kirby was asked about these guys, and he said none of the three transfers that Georgia has on the team got to play spring ball. They all came later, and everyone keeps asking him, how do they look? How do they look? He's like, look, I don't get to see them. They came in, they're working out, they're doing,
Right.
other stuff, but it's not like he's coached them yet. He's not been on the field with them, and that'll happen when camp starts. But he did mention –
you made a good point there, Roddy, and I want to reiterate that. From a standpoint, you've got guys here that have busted their ass for years and years, like Speed and Breeny, and that have come here and held on to the program and done what they're supposed to do. And you're not just going to throw them out the pasture based on a guy – and when you're talking in the public based on the guys, what he's done in another school. So you're going to stand up for your guys and you're just going to say, look, and what people don't realize is coaches don't get to go out there and watch these guys do 7-on-7. I mean, they could if they want to break the rules, but they could go out there and walk around like they're doing some working out on their own, like some coaches do at other schools. But I just feel like that's a real good characteristic of Kirby. The same way he does when he talks about freshmen earning their spot and everything. Stand up for your upperclassmen, give them the chance. And then if something happens that these other guys move in, they earn that right. But Kendrick and Smith are going to have to earn their spurs. Same way with Eric Gilbert. And they understand that. They're not just going to be given anything, but they also know what our roster looks like. And I thought Kirby did a very good job of explaining to everybody that we're 4 down in the defensive room because of 2 guys that came out early that we didn't think would, and 2 guys that transferred. So you lose 4 guys from that room, and that's a tremendous amount of numbers. And when you have to have, even in your 2 deep, you got to have 8 defensive backs. And then if you play nickel, you got to have 10, 5 and 5. So our scholarship numbers really needed to be enhanced, and we picked it up with those 2 guys, and they saw the chance to play, and particularly with Smith, his coach is here, and I'm sure coach told him exactly what he thought he could fit in. And then I thought Kirby did another good job of saying, look, I recruited this kid out of Rock Hill High School. I know his parents. I know everything about him, just like Coach Muschamp did too. So and you look at a kid like Kendrick, who had a little bit of baggage, and all that's come out of the wayside now, which I'm happy for him. But this is an investment on his part. He's got to go out there and show that he can cover and play the techniques that Kirby Smart, so every NFL coach knows if you play defensive back for Nick Saban or Kirby Smart or any of his proteges, you know the techniques that need to be employed in the NFL. So this is going to be a good situation for him, a dress rehearsal for, the NFL draft. And he's got to go out there and earn his spot.
Yeah. He said mostly, this is from Kirby Smart, said most of what we've seen has been on tape, and on tape, each one of them played very differently. DK played corner and played a lot more similar style of defense to ours, meaning that he does the stuff that Georgia had done. But he said Tyke was different. He played a lot of overhang star, wasn't asked to do as far as man-to-man play. And we're going to find out what those guys are capable of. So I thought that was a good way of kind of differentiating what they do. And it's if you've been watching the show for a long time, it's not a shock to you, but I think that might have surprised a lot of people because, Coach, you told us this going into it, but I thought Kirby reiterated that. And I also thought, Dane, you were mentioning how Nick Saban dropped that little tidbit before his time under the lights tomorrow about the NIL stuff. Kirby Smart saying, look, we're down in that defensive back room, and I'm sure that every defensive back in the 2022 class probably got that clip of Kirby Smart addressing the media saying, we need to build our numbers here. So it's those guys they're not dumb. This isn't their first rodeo.
Well, the ones that Kirby wants, they'd already been told that, I promise you.
Well, I'm sure, but it's like, look, I'm not just saying it. I'm saying it publicly, so you send them the clip going.
Wink, wink, yeah.
Yeah.
Had those 2 kids that went to Clemson didn't hear that.
Yeah, that was a tough one. But we did have a good
I shouldn't have said that.
a good list there of guys that Georgia's going to be going after. Shout out to Jed May and Blaine Gilmer and Ben Bachman for the work that they've done putting together the list of who else Georgia will be going after in the secondary. It's a pretty strong list. You need to check it out. So those aren't the only guys left out there. So check them out.
Check out the recruiting show too on this YouTube channel, airing Monday nights, 8:30. 8:15. Yeah. Don't go late and be there at 8:30, like I just said. Let's finish up with one last question here from YouTube. This is from John Paul Williams. I'm going to adjust this a little bit, John Paul. First of all, he says, love you, coach. So you have a fan in John Paul Williams. He says, will the offensive line gel enough in time for the first game, considering that Clemson has one of the best defensive lines in the nation? And we talked a lot about offensive line last week. You can go back and watch our show from last week or listen to it if you want the position by position breakdown of offensive line. Though I will say Jordan Davis gave nice shout outs to Warren Erickson and Cedric Van Pran because he sees them practice every day across the line of scrimmage. What I wanted to kind of phrase this, coach, for you is as we enter fall camp, SEC Media Days is the unofficial kickoff to the season. As we enter fall camp, the positions that are up for grabs, where there's the most competition, how long do those remain in competition? I mean, does it go up to game week, or is that kind of settled before then?
Yeah, I think they'll certainly look at some different combinations and work with different guys that tackle and guard and things like that. But they'll have a pretty cohesive group after that last scrimmage. That dress rehearsal went on Saturday before the Clemson game. And the one thing that is really good from a coaching perspective that I think that Matt Luke will certainly utilize is going against our defensive front is going to certainly enhance knowing whether a guy's good enough to block Brian Breezy or block these other guys that Clemson has. They've got to block Carter, and they've got to block Walker, and they got a pass pro on Nolan Smith and Adam Anderson. So it's not going to be like a freak show when they go out there in front of all those people up in Charlotte. So, but I really feel good about the fact that the competition that we have in the O-line is going to be so fierce that it's going to make it, whoever wins the job is going to be game ready because they're going to have so many reps, one-on-one drive block, one-on-one reach technique, one-on-one step and pull, one-on-one snatching a guy, whatever it might be. They're going to have thousands and thousands of reps against good competition. And we'll have a very good O-line when we get ready to go. And they're going to be blocking for some really good backs and a quarterback that puts them in the right play and some receivers that can get open. So we'll have a very good offensive line that first game, and it'll be ready to rock and roll.
As good as it can be.
That's all the questions I have, Roddy.
I'm just saying. I can't follow that. I mean, coaches know that's as good as you can. That's as good as you can want in an answer. That's as good as you can want in a question. Coach just nailed it. I'm ready to leave on that. It doesn't get any better than that. So we will, with that question, we will take our leave. We appreciate everybody tuning in at 7:00 on a Tuesday night. We normally don't do it. We normally do it in the middle of the day, but hopefully some of you were able to join us while you ate dinner. And shout out to our sponsors, Athens Ford, Your Pie, and Academia Brewing Company. Shout out to you for watching the show. Hit that subscribe button. It would mean a lot to us. And if you would turn on notifications, that way, if for some reason you're not around on Tuesday and we do the show at a different time or something, you will be notified when the show is ready and you can jump on there. Thanks everybody for your questions. And we should be back to our normal schedule next Tuesday at noon. We look forward to talking some Georgia football for you then. We're getting closer and closer. Practice will be here in the, 14 days, 15 days. We're almost to practice. So
Are they going to let you go to practice this year?
Don't know. Not holding my breath. But fingers crossed. And if they don't, well, then we'll probably have to do something to sneak a drone in there and get some good practice scrimmage or good.
Don't be telling the secrets.
Yeah. All right, everybody, take care.